The text that first prompted the claims to Viennese exceptionalism in the realm of ideas was Fin de siècle Vienna, Politics and Culture, by the Princeton historian Karl Skorsky, first published in 1980. Skorsky's elegant and persuasive volume is the bedrock for those interested in Vienna and the history of ideas, inspiring writers, artists, and scholars to comb over the subject in ever more detail. My inquiry explores many of the questions that Skorsky provoked, but never fully answered, about the sheer breadth of Vienna's influence. As his title suggests, he dwelt entirely on the now very familiar fin de siècle, the glittering metropolis of Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, Gustav Mahler, Alfred Loos, Arthur Schnitzler, Robert Musil, and Gustav Klimt, the setting for so many subsequent plays, memoirs, and films, most recently Tom Stoppard's Leopoldstadt. Like others before me, however, I have considerably widened the historical focus. I argue that any claims for Vienna's primacy can only be made if this chapter in the city's history is considered alongside the lesser-known but transformative interwar period. These were the years of Red Vienna, where the city council embarked on a radically ambitious democratic experiment in human evolution, arguably the first of its kind. By taking this synoptic view, as the historian Edmund Timms argued, the case for seeing the city as a matrix for innovation becomes much stronger, conflating the creative convulsions of the declining Habsburg Empire with the ideological dynamics of the interwar period. At every level, Timms reminds us, there was a dramatic radicalization after the First World War. This is the real key to Vienna's sway over Western culture and ideas, for better and for worse. Moreover, I have attempted to cleave Vienna from the suffocating embrace of German studies. Too often, the Austrian contribution to the history of ideas in the 20th century is subsumed into histories and studies of German-speaking diasporas and émigré communities. This sort of generic classification, however, does Vienna a gross disservice, as the city's mental landscape was decisively different from that of Germany in several respects. Indeed, to a large degree, Vienna defined itself against Germany's intellectual and Enlightenment history, and this is one reason why its citizens were so effacious in the West. Particularly during the Cold War, for example, they were critically important in providing a new political lexicon that allowed the West eventually to triumph over the totalitarianism of both right and left. Who is Viennese? The scope of the book rests largely on how I have chosen to define Viennese. Some words of explanation are therefore needed. The city was, of course, in prosaic terms, a spatial geographical entity enclosed within administrative boundaries that shifted over time. However, as I argue in Chapter 1, Vienna was also a cultural and intellectual creation in and of itself. The most important point of difference with other great capital cities is that Vienna was composed largely of immigrants, often from the farthest ends of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They settled there to contribute to, and benefit from, the world's most dynamic and perhaps tolerant intellectual community. This is how the Viennese in this book always defined themselves, resisting all the other ethno-nationalist, religious or gender-specific labels forced upon them by others, however well-meaning. Austrian culture, by contrast, was an entirely different affair, as will become evident. In today's debased currency of ideas, these Viennese might be described as people from nowhere, but they saw themselves passionately and unreservedly as people from somewhere, that somewhere being Vienna. That is one reason why this Vienna of Stefan Zweig's The World of Yesterday continues to exert such a hold on the imagination.